morning and welcome to DJF Live. This is episode 48. Really great to have you here again in the studio in New York City. This is a show where we talk about production, live streaming, video photography. So if you have any questions around that or just life in general, drop them in the chat. On today's show, we're going to take a look at NAB. What is your dream device? We're going to take a look at some firmware updates that Canon has for their PTZ cameras, also for the R5C. And we're going to take a little look at how I'm auto starting my shows these days to take some of the weight off me. I can see down here it is automatically started recording. So many automations makes light work when you're trying to present on camera. So again, if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the chat, say hi, let me know where you're from. And if you have any questions around production, we'd be happy to answer them. All right, kicking off our show today, NAB is just around the corner. I can't actually go this year. I would love to go next year maybe, but just want to know, what is your dream NAB device? What are you looking forward to being released this year? I gotta say, I'm not like overly dying for something. I feel like most of my needs are pretty satiated here in the studio. I feel like I've got some good equipment, good cameras, and I'm happy just getting content out and live streaming at the moment. I would say if there's one thing that I think could be really cool is a new ATEM switcher, which is kind of like the TV Studio HD8 with all of that functionality, but in the 1U form factor, because I do like my 2ME Constellation I've got over here in the rack, and being able to have a device that had like 20 inputs, 12 outputs, 8 ISO recording within the device, streaming 4K recording would be nice. Let's do 4K while we're at it. And then being able to video playback within the device, and then also to be able to bring in a remote caller sort of within the device, kind of like Zephan Moses mentioned in one of his videos recently. So that's what I would like to see, the ultimate device. I think Blackmagic could do it. But, you know, we just push on. We do what we do by putting devices together. Like, for example, my device at the moment is a 2ME switcher, and then I've got the ATEM Extreme ISO for the ISO recording alongside that. So let me know. All right, so kicking off look at today. Last week I was talking about PTZ in depth, and I had a few more things to add to that. So one of them is firmware updates that have been announced, probably ahead of NAB. So I thought I'd just go over that. Let me have a look here. We can cut to here. Okay, so the press release from Canon says that they have some paid add-ons and some firmware updates from for the cameras. So the main thing is the free updates, which I've actually installed, which I think is 1.2 in the camera that you're looking at me on here, is if we scroll down here, additional firmware. So it's basically adding SRT to be able to stream with, and then 3D protocol. So if I jump into my camera here, I'm on the settings page, and down we've got the standard IP, NDI-HX, TMP, and then the SRT is now here. So we can enable that, and that gives us some options here, listener, caller, and the algorithm. I haven't really played with SRT, so I'm gonna have to look into this a bit more. I know a lot of the other streaming guys on H2R Discord and that kind of stuff, they love the SRT. So I need to look into that more and understand its benefits. But great to know that Canon has added that into the CRN 300, 500, 700, gives a really good update. So there's that. And then the other thing was, what was the other thing? No, where is it? Okay. It was the, I can't see it. There's so much stuff in here. Right on loop, firmware, here we go. Firmware, SRT, and 3D, that's what I meant to say. 3D is in here somewhere in the settings. Not quite sure where it is. I'll have to hunt around for it. I'm pretty sure I saw it in there. But the 3D sort of tracking protocol has been added in there as well. Again, I don't know how to use that, but I might look into that. All right, next up, let's take a look. Also in this announcement was that Canon was announcing tracking and loop. Now, the downside, I guess, of this is an external paid add-on application. So this is not something that's happening within the cameras. This is something that you're going to pay for. Again, if we go to the firmware, the press release, so it's the auto tracking add-on application. If you search for YouTube, there's videos demonstrating this. I'm really excited about this feature particularly because even for what I do in this studio, I think it would be really neat, you know, just to have a camera that is sort of moving around and tracking me a little bit more. I think that is one of the benefits of using a PTZ camera, is that I can automate things and find different camera positions, but then this tracking software would track face and torso and body, and you could set it to certain parameters. So it means that if I'm doing this kind of shot with you, rather than it being completely static, it would probably have like a little bit of movement as it's tracking me in this sort of environment. And probably what it's more intended for is like a speaker at a podium, for example. If I'm walking across stage, then the camera will track me across the stage and then track me back. And that is huge. I was speaking with Canon last year about that and saying, like, I think, like, why can't we have this? We need to have this. And they were like, we're working on it. And at the time they couldn't, they were trying to figure out if it was something that would go into the camera or whether it would be an external application. And that's just such a big win for particularly small productions, I think, where you're trying to have a smaller crew and you don't want to have, it's also just very laborious for an operator to all day at a conference just follow people back and forth. So I think it is enabling tools to automate things a little bit more, so you can have your operators a little bit more free to just monitor things and to switch cameras and that kind of stuff. So very excited to see that. The other one that they have is an auto loop add-on application. So this is not just one application, these are two applications with two different price points. So the tracking one is $1,200 and the looping one is $800. So you're looking at a sort of $2,000 investment here to have it. The looping one, so it provides the ability to enable smooth acceleration, deceleration when starting and stopping movement between two preset positions for more professional camera movements. What I would say is if you go into Companion and you use Companion's PTZ module, then you can have preset positions, and you could also, like, Companion is a whole tool where you can just like automate this. So you could pick preset 1 and preset 2 and just slowly like move between them. So I'm on the camera here. So you could basically have like a wide shot and then set up a delay so that it is zooming in to the next shot like that. So I don't know, I'd be interested to see that, like, if I had that application, would I use it or would I actually use Companion, just given that so much of my workflow is in Companion. Could also save me $800, but I do think that the tracking application is very interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. All right, next up, we gotta go up here. So last week when I was talking about the camera, connecting the Canon PTZs to a Mac, I was saying, like, you had to kind of hack your way around it and reboot it, put it on the network to find the address. I had a viewer comment during the week, which is fantastic, from Bart Buurman. Says, thanks for the in-depth video. He is an avid CRN 300 and 500 user, and he actually says in this long comment here is that there is an application that you can use to do all this on a Mac. And I was like, wait, what? There's an application for this? So I bought these cameras back in 2021, and at the time when they came out, there was a bit of Windows software, but there was no Mac solution, and so I just had to kind of like figure it out, and that was my reboot hack. So what I have is, if you search the web, I could find a link for you, but you can search the web, you will have some remote control applications that you can download. Again, my desktop here looking a bit messy. There's basically a remote control camera application and a camera search tool. So now if I boot up this one, you can see that, trying to get in the keychain here, the cameras are automatically discovered on the network, and it's showing me the IP addresses. So it's so simple and so necessary, and like that just makes the user experience night and day difference, I think. So great, good on you, Canon, for doing a Mac application, mostly because I just use Macs. If you use Windows, then you're probably fine. Once you've got your cameras on the network and connected, then you can click on the remote camera application tool. And this application basically is sort of like an extension of the web browser version. So I've got my two PTZ cameras in here. I can come into my camera list and I can go camera management and I could go add. And this is where I would type in camera name, I would give it the address and type in the port number and it would add it in here. And so then my cameras would show up down here and then I can put them into this window here to control them. It's basically like function F1 to select a camera. So F1 or F2 to select different cameras. And you'll see the parameters on the side here have turned on when I select a camera. It also means you could select multiple cameras and then now you're controlling two cameras. So if I zoom in, both of my cameras are zooming in and out here. And what else we got down here? Video layout. Video layout, you can have like 3x3 if you had a whole bunch more cameras. I've only got two, so I've just got these two here. And then down, so you've got the basic, where are we? So you can turn on, you can do the like shutter, exposure, all that kind of stuff to adjust the camera, like so. Oh, let's make it dark. Let's make it, drag this out here. It's a very manual process. So this is why I still like the Stream Deck or like Companion to run this. And then you can bring up your different presets. So I could go to my second preset here and then to my first preset. And then what you can do on here, which I don't think you can do on the actual web application, is you can go to, where is it hiding? It's hiding under here, preset trace settings. Is that right? Okay. Now you can go to, so you would have your presets. So you would find a, what am I on? 1. So let's execute. I'm going to go to position number 2, and then I would click 1 and execute, go to position number 1. But now that I've got that, I can go to trace and I'll go to this 3 position here. So we're going to go start recording and you'll see this timer will pop up here. So I could be like, hey guys, welcome to the show. And I would time out my presentation to be like, blah, 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 blah. And then I know that like 10 seconds in, I've run out of things to say and I need to go to a closer position. And so I would hit number 3 to zoom in for effect. And then I would go to something else that's interesting, like over to this PTZ camera that I have in the corner. Look at this, isn't this great? Okay, back to me on a mid shot. And that is all we have time for today. So I will see you next week. Bye, that kind of stuff, all right? So now we go stop recording. And then there's a prepare and an execute here. So we can go prepare trace and it'll go to the first position and then I'll go execute. And so now it goes in. The only thing is that I feel like see how that went straight in and then it's like, I don't know, I feel like some of the timing is not exactly what you would have. And then we go back here. This was much shorter than what I had in terms of executing it. So this is basically building a macro. So if you think about like the ATEM and you can build a macro in the ATEM to execute a whole bunch of different things, we're building a macro here to do a trace. The advantage of this is that it's built within the camera. So now I could just recall, like this was one I was playing with earlier. So I would prepare trace number 1, which is the same position, execute, and it's gone over, I think I had a different camera position over here. And then it's doing its thing and whatever. I can also cancel it. For me, while that is maybe an interesting feature to have, I think what is far more useful for me, again, is Companion, because you can actually just like type it out. And you can, I basically do a trace setting when I start this show. So if I go to page 5, I have my run of show here. These are my different cues. And so my pre-show setup will push the PTZ 1 to preset 10, which is my out of focus shot. Sorry, PTZ 2 to preset 10, which is my out of focus shot. And then PTZ 1 is going to preset 1. So that's my, at the start of the show, it's a wide shot on me and the other camera's out of focus so that we can, I can be off camera and not have to, and get ready for things. And then when I run the show, so it's 10 a.m. and I go, let's start, then that is when this Q button gets hit. And you can see I will drop the music. This is the other advantage of Companion, is that you can build in lighting, audio, switching, like all these other elements into a show rather than just the camera. And it means that I can like time out these things. So for example, I've got I think it's a 30-second push between the wide shot into me. So it's like a slow zoom in at the start of the show, but it's also, it's not tied to my pre-show setup. So I can start that, I can execute that at any time that I want quite easily. And then I know that segment, like how long I've got to do certain things in my preamble of like, hey, welcome, that kind of stuff. So we come down here, a bunch of other things happening, but PTZ 1 is going to preset 3. So remember, preset 3 was my MCU in here. And then after, where are we? So then, and then the graphics come up, and then on this delay here, so after 1 second has passed, 1,000 milliseconds, my camera 2, which was on the blurry out of focus shot, is repositioning onto, I think onto my iPad, yeah, just to show the companion setting. So it's getting ready for the next shot. So for me, I like this workflow because it's very graphical, and I can see, you can type in things. So with like that trace macro, if you made a mistake here and you wanted to, like in the middle of this 5-minute trace, or probably a bit sooner, then you need to go back and redo it. Whereas I can test this run of show, and I do that all the time in my getting ready for this show. I will actually test the show because all of my cues, Q1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that we have 7 on today's show, they're always a little bit different, and that's where it helps to be able to test that and then make changes. Like today, I realized I needed to adjust the music. So VLC here is hitting this button once we come in, and we're into the show and we turn off the music. So, and yeah, all right. Let's have a little check-in on the socials just before we continue on here, and we shall see who is here and who's got some comments. AG, great to have you here. IT never gets old. Always great to have you here on the channel. My pictures aren't loading today in HR. I'm not quite sure why. G'day, Jules. Happy Easter. Your Upper East Side neighbor. Good to have you here. Crazy Red 007. Hey, David. Joe from Chicago. Good to have you here. This will be good. All right. So I'm guessing this is a new something you want from NAB, which would be a Canon PTZ 400 with a slightly larger sensor at the same price as the 300. I think the larger sensor is going to make it a $15,000 PTZ, given that the 700 is the same sensor size as the 500, which is like a 1-inch sensor. I would be interested to see a 200, I guess kind of like you have the C200, which is more in the, I don't know if you say $1,200 to $1,500 range. I think that's like quite accessible and could be a really good YouTuber PTZ market for Canon. But that still has things like SDI and HDMI. They've got I never played with it, but they've got a PIC or something, a Canon PIC, which is a tiny little PTZ camera. I think it's more of a consumer device. I don't know, it's about $500. But I think sort of a 200 would be kind of cool. IT Never Gets Old says, I didn't think it's likely, but I would love to see an ATEM similar to what you describe, but it should include both SDI and HDMI, so you do not have to deal with converters all the time. Yeah, I see so many people's rack videos on YouTube, and they're all trying to deal with the same thing, which is they're trying to make a minimalist rack, and a lot of switches, combine everything into it, but then these latest Blackmagic ones being SDI only. I mean, SDI is great for long camera runs and sort of more professional, more reliable, but just so many things also need an HDMI in for, there's just so much stuff you need to run through a computer, and having an HDMI in as well as HDMI out for sort of more domestic monitoring is really, really great. So I would love to see that too. Eric also agrees that the less converters is good. It takes up like the converters and the power bricks, and that's what I was saying before in terms of rolling all this into one. It's like some of the biggest wins are the power management that goes on within a switcher, because if you have to plug in multiple devices, then you've got a power strip connected to little power bricks, and like that takes up space, and then you've got all the converters and the patching cables, and like all that support infrastructure becomes a lot. Yeah. Great question here from AG. On a future episode, I would love to I would enjoy seeing your post-production workflow. Yeah, I can do that. That's good. I did a edit video last year. It was meant to be a 2-part series, and then I never finished editing. I've got a couple of videos where I've like shot them and then I haven't edited them. So yeah. But I can show you my post-production workflow. I guess, is there anything in particular that you would like to see? I don't know if you're talking about post-production for live. I probably have a couple of things that I would do. One is for my main commercial work, that's more shot like single cam, or, you know, like a 2-camera interview type thing, B-roll. So that's syncing audio and proxies, and haven't quite got into the remote collaboration, but that's definitely been at the top of my list in terms of getting an editor remotely in Brooklyn to just kind of edit and cut, and then they can sync it up without having to ship hard drives around. And then for the live streaming work that I do, that is where I would often record ISO onto the extreme ISO, and then I have that 1080p H.264 footage that's all synced up, and then I can cut that up. That's more like, you know, live streams, webinars, that kind of stuff. But let me know. IT Never Gets Old says, or a multi-converter box, a single box, or 6 to 8 HDMI SDI cross converters. This would be great to get in here. Let me see, questions. All right, keep the questions coming in. I'm going to jump back into the next segment, just to keep things rolling along. And let's go back to here. Part of this update as well was the Canon R5C update. There were a couple of other things in there in terms of cine lenses and that kind of stuff, but I mentioned the R5C because I have one here. Where am I? There we go. There's my R5C. That was, I don't know. I set this up before the show thinking like I could show you the firmware, but I haven't actually put the firmware on it. But this is the firmware. It's like 1.1, I think I'm running, and they've got some new stuff that is out. So let's take a look at that over on this other document here. All right, so they say how amazing they are, as they should. They got a lot of great stuff coming out. One of the cool things, I don't know, it just sounds good. It is good too, but I think a signal to noise ratio in the R5C has been improved such that the R5C is now, what do you call it, on the Netflix list of cameras, which is really exciting, and is also something I'm glad that I went that route. So if you're new to the channel, I've had like a C200, which I still have, and I use as a sort of backup camera for some things, but my main sort of production work has been with the R5C for photo and for video, obviously because it's a hybrid camera. And so it's nice to see these firmware updates that are coming through. One of them is this AF improved performance. There's a lot of thing about, like, if you've got the R5, then the photography auto tracking is very good, but because the R5C uses a whole different cinema menu for all of its video recording, then that's where the way it approaches auto tracking is slightly different. So they've made some adjustments to that, which helps with the head tracking. So if someone turns away, it'll still stay on someone's head tracking if they can't find the eye tracking. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to doing this update. The power save mode, this is good. This is a big, I'd be interested to test this and see how much improvement we have on the power saving mode. I basically don't treat the internal battery as anything that I could use video for, other than maybe grabbing a couple of like on the fly run and gun B-roll shots if I'm just needing to pick up a few things. But in terms of general production, the Canon LP6NH batteries are woeful for video. For photo, they're fine. and you get to about 50% of the battery, and then it doesn't have enough juice to actually run it in the video mode, and so I end up getting 5 minutes often, maybe up to about 10, 13 minutes on a fully charged battery. So hopefully that will improve some things there. They've got the faster switching time between the photo and video mode, and this one's good. I've actually got this dual fisheye lens here, which is just more usability there to be able to zoom in, and I need to test it out. Need more time in life to test these things. Clear scan, and that's about it. So anyway, if you've got the R5C, make sure you go and grab that update and check it out, because that's pretty cool. All right, what is next? Auto show start. Okay, so, and we'll get to questions just a bit more after this, but I just wanted to run through how I have been starting my show using Companion, because I have the run of show queue that you probably have seen before on the channel, but more recently I've been using triggers to automate the show, and that's just taken one more thing off my plate. So I'm going to show you what I do for getting, when I come into the studio and I get this show all set up, the live streaming is automated, and the recording, because I do record these episodes just for backup in case I ever edit one day, which I haven't done so far. I would like to put out like smaller clips of these live streams, like little nuggets for people, but just don't have time. Excuse me. So let's take a look at that, which is basically on Companion here. And I got my, gonna move my things out of the way. Got my laptop down here and my emojis. How am I, hang on. There we go. Cool. So I'm using triggers to automatically trigger the start of the show. So again, you saw my run of show here. So this is where I can have, where are we, in my queue section. I've got 24 queues that I can have, and when I select one, it will automatically go to the next queue, so that I can just keep hitting this button here, and I can also build that into a clicker if I wanted to just like advance the show that way. It's not plugged in at the moment. But then there's other things that I have built in, and that's on my show page. So I have the web presenter going live, and then the ATEM Extreme ISO recording here. And then I have these little triggers here that I can turn on and off. So at the moment, it's highlighted to show that these are activated. And otherwise I can, if I click them, then these are now off. So at that time of day, it would not run. So I've put in a little time here to remember when that is. So at 9:50 a.m., I'm going to start my live streaming, which is 10 minutes before we go to air. And at 5 seconds before, so this is 9:55 and 55 seconds, I'm going to start my recording on my ATEM Extreme ISO, which is over the back here, because I don't want to start the recording way earlier, because I don't need the footage, and it's just more data to archive and manage. But also, once I get that close to air, I'm probably likely to forget it, because I'm thinking about my welcome and saying hi and that kind of stuff. There's been a number of times where I'm like 3 minutes into the show and I'm like, oh, okay, hit record, start. So this is a way to take this off my plate so that I don't have to think about this before I go on air. So you can see here we are recording. We are streaming on the web presenter, but I'm running beta software, and as you can see, the web presenter on build 5746 is not working. I can't even deactivate it. I was running, where did we go? Down here. I was running build 5774, which was working with the web presenter, but the PTZ cameras modules was having problems with it. So all that to say, Companion version 3 still has a bunch of bugs, so I wouldn't run it on an actual show unless it's your own show and you don't mind messing it up. So on today's show, I'm running it back at 5746, which was the last sort of stable version I was able to find for what I'm using with the ATEM and the PTZ cameras and Notion and I don't know, Hyperdeck and Web. Normally Web Presenter was working, so I don't know if something's happened there. Anyway, And then we've got ATEM2 is my SDI Extreme. So that's what I'm recording to. So let's jump over to triggers. And you can see here, you can add a trigger. I've got some auto ones here. So my timestamp one is saying at 9:50 on a Friday, if this trigger is on, which it is, then I want you to take this action, which is in timestamp, which is like Notion, start a session and give it a name. I think I would love to see variables being able to be used down here, so then I could actually put in the date and time rather than just, this is kind of like I would put in a name here. So that is creating markers. So it means that if I go over to Notion under my run of show, you can see, I think I've got this working. Is that today? What's today's date? The 7th? Yes. So the show started and then I was hitting my cues here. And is that right? 9:57, 58. Or maybe I started that 57. Okay. No, I had to set up one. And then, so each of my cues as I go through, remember I step back through my cues, so let's hit that cue number again. And so all of these markers are chapter markers that I can then, at the end of a show, take into YouTube. And I'm trying to get to a place where I can cut and paste that to make it faster. But essentially put in, this is why I want variables in Notion, guys. This would be so good because I could get the button info from my cue. So if I have under my cue, it could be pre-show run, and then I could give all these buttons names, and then each time I press it, that is automatically putting text into Notion so that when I copy and paste at the end of the live stream, when we come in here at the live stream, that is where it will just speed up the whole chapter marker section of it. Okay, jumping back to triggers. So that's my auto timestamp. Remember, under buttons, auto stamp. So here I could turn that one off, and then if I go to triggers, you'll see that auto timestamp is off. And I can also turn that back on here. Web presenter is, so the event is at the time of day, 9:50 on a Friday. I want you to start the web stream. At the moment it says undefined because there's problems with the module, but normally that would be active. And I want it to start. So even I'm doing something 10 minutes before my live streaming software is pushing out to YouTube. Now, I don't have that on automatic go live. So there is a YouTube module which I could build in to have Companion switch it over to live. But essentially, I will come in here and this end stream button would normally be a go live button. So that's my, so there's no chance of me just like pushing out video while I'm rehearsing and that kind of stuff. It's pushing it to YouTube, but YouTube itself is not putting it out to you guys until about a minute before. And it just means that I can, in this window, I can monitor it and I go, okay, we're all connected. We've got the right streaming key. Internet's working. Everything's looking good. And then I can jump over to here and I go live and I push it out. That's when I'll be back on my pre-show with the out of focus shot, and it would have the countdown so you know when the show is starting. Back to triggers, also with the recording. So ATEM2 is my my second ATEM. So the Constellation 2ME is my number one ATEM, which is doing all of the switching and routing. And then the Extreme SDI ISO is what is basically a multi-track recorder. And I'm controlling that through Companion as well. So I've got this trigger such that when I turn these on at 9:59 and 55 seconds, so 5 seconds before we go on air, it's going to switch it on. And I've got a couple of things here. One is turning it on. So I could toggle it, but I actually just want it to be on. But 30 milliseconds before that, I've also got this ATEM command, which is to set the file name. And that is using an internal variable. So it's getting the date, time, so the year, month, date, underscore, hours, minutes, seconds. And it basically means that when I go to my hard drive later, rather than just having a whole bunch of files that go ATEM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm like, well, I don't know, like, what was that exactly? At least I have a date and time stamp. So I can go like, oh, that was last week's live stream. And it just helps me organize things ahead of time. And then we come down to this last one, which is just something that I have in my profile. I'm using a custom variable called REC, record. And because I've got 3 ATEMs, I want to be able to see up here my record time. And depending on the ATEM that I'm using in terms of like the Mini Pro or the Extreme or the Hyperdeck, I want to know what that record time is. And so I can use a variable to update what the record time is. So each time I press record on one of these devices, it updates the variable text. So for example, because my recording at the moment is happening through the Extreme, this is pushing into the record variable this text, which is REC and then /n for new line. And then the variable text is ATEM2 is my second ATEM module, record duration, hours, minutes, seconds. And that you will see up here is coming up into my sort of console, so that when I'm having my switching, I can, on any of these pages, I can, even on my queue page, I can just keep tabs of, is this clocking over? And something I've got to do here is some of the newer updates of Companion, I'm going to be able to get this text to be read. So visually I can see that it's recording. But this is the problem, is I'm trying to use like the latest builds as I build this stuff, and then I have things like the PTZ modules not working, so I have to go back a few, and then I don't have access to some of these things. So that's a record one, and the same thing for the live. Normally that would show the tracking. I can see on my multi-view down here that we're on air and everything's good, so I have visual on that. But once these modules are sort of ironed out, that would have the same red for on air and is showing me the clock ticking over, so I can go, partly so that I know that yes, we're still streaming, and also I can go, 36 minutes in. I have a sense of hopefully like people's energy. I've been talking for 36 minutes here and hopefully haven't put you to sleep. And it's also a good time to hit button number 7 and come back to, does anyone have any questions for me on today's show? So let's go into a bit more of a Q&A chat. That was some of my stuff that I wanted to demo for you guys. But keep the questions rolling in terms of what you're looking forward to seeing at NAB or anything else that we've talked about on today's show. Or if you just have any other production questions, video, photography, live streaming, or if you just want to talk about life, we can talk about life here on the channel too, because we make these things for life, right? It's not just for tech stuff. We do the tech so that we can converse with people. So if you have anything you want to talk about, let me know. All right. IT Never Gets Old also would like to see a multi-converter box. That would be amazing. I think that would solve actually a lot of problems. Maybe in like a 4 or an 8. Single box with, 6 or 8. HDMI 6 is probably good actually, because I think by the time you want to jump from one, you want a whole bunch. And HDMI and SDI cross converters. That would be so neat, particularly if they could keep it small, if they could keep the power brick and all that back end of it manageable, so you don't have like a neat converter box, but then this massive power brick that you have to deal with in a rack when you're trying to be mobile and go to different shoots. That's actually like such a simple, basic idea that is so profound, and I don't know that it's out there. I don't think Blackmagic doesn't make it. They should make it. It seems like a product that they would make, and I think that's a really great idea, and I would definitely get one, because every time I want to plug in a new camera, so if I want to spin up my my R5C or some other camera, and so like my R5C at the moment is mini HDMI or whatever. Let me see if I can pull this up. Going across here. Yeah, it's this little mini HDMI thing, which is not great for production, but it means that I have to run it into a cross, like a bidirectional converter. And then I have to power that bidirectional converter. And I have a whole bunch of sort of like USB ports on my rack that I can plug into it. But it's just, it's more wires, it's more things to think of. It gets messy. Then things are like, put across things. And yeah, it'd be much easier to have that all in a single box. All right, so what else we got? All right, question here. Rev, I'm not going to say this. Amithiragala Thero. sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm recording lectures for the students who are only 20 years away, 20 years old. Is it practical to get an ATEM ISO for 4K recording and export as DaVinci 4K with Blackmagic RAW fill? Yeah, that is a workflow. So if you've got an ATEM Mini or ATEM ISO, I guess like a four channel ATEM Mini Pro, you could have your Blackmagic cameras recording internally. It's a lot of data. I would say, like, if you're doing lecture content, doesn't need to be 4K. If you've got the bandwidth to make it 4K and you want to deal with all the data, not just for one lecture, but think about like over the course of a year or multiple years. I mean, I'm already thinking about what I do here each week where I talk for an hour. I end up with 250 gigabytes of isolated camera files, and I have to back that up and store that. So I'm already thinking, and I wish Blackmagic would open up more controls on the extreme to set your bit rates and things like that, because I would quite happily reduce some of the quality of the ISO backups to be able to have a clean camera record. But instead of it being like 70 gig, like a 66 gig file at the end of a session for one camera, have it be like 5 gig. That would be nice. So think about like the longer term, because you say you're doing lectures, so you know they're probably an hour or more or whatever. So this is long form stuff. This is not short things. Are you going to be able to manage 4K data? If you can, awesome. All power to you. But I would say with a lecture, it's probably more about the content than it is about the resolution and the cinematic power of it and that kind of stuff. So think about a workflow that is going to make it easy and fun for you to deal with that, because I could imagine 4K recordings would get a lot. The other thing is, even though that workflow of recording to the ISO on the ATEM in HD and then having Blackmagic RAW files, which are big, Blackmagic has done a pretty good job of like being able to match those in post, but it's still a step that you have to have someone to do, and that takes time. That takes person power to be able to do that. So think about it, because like maybe if it's a course that you want like really polished and you're selling it or something like that, maybe it makes sense to use the Blackmagic RAW files. But I would say, for the most part, just record ISO HD and then go get a coffee. Because, I don't know, it's just like, you end up with just data everywhere, and it's too much. It's too much. All right. But Billman is also a regular commenter on H2R Discord too. Always good to see people helping. Yeah, that was, Bart was the one who gave me the tip about the Canon that had actually released Mac software. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Bart, for bringing that to my attention. Probably also highlights that Canon hasn't done a very good job of promoting that, because I feel like I get a ton of press for like all the new cameras and stuff and the B&H things and whatever. And I didn't see that, and if I'd seen it, I would have jumped on that back in November or whatever when it came out. So I don't know. I think having spoken with the Canon guys, I know that they were like, I think one of their challenges with, and probably just generally in that sector, is like PTZs aren't as cool and sexy as cinema camera. You know, like I don't know if you want to, like, I'm a PTZ camera operator. Like it's just not. It's not sexy. But I think it's really cool. I think it's neat because it just opens up so many possibilities for shows like this, where it's just me in the studio conversing with you guys, and it enables me to show you a whole lot of things and to move the camera around, make it a bit more interesting than just a single locked off shot. And I think, you know, with some lighting and whatever, it looks pretty good, even though you don't have the depth of field of the R5C. I've got my R5C down here pointing at a box, and I'm just looking at the shallow depth of field. Do I have that? No, I can't. I can bring that up. Yes, I can. Which is this one. There we go. That's what my camera is pointing at. But that's a 35mm prime lens there. Just looking at the back end of this. Not the most exciting thing, but that's what I got. All right, next question. My preview and control app is poor quality compared to viewing NDI in OBS feed. Yeah, you're going to get poor quality in these apps because I guess it's just like saving the network bandwidth. Like, I don't know if you can see in this shot, but it almost looks analog. Like there's some sort of horizontal tearing that I feel like goes on. Like there's a flicker in the noise here, which is kind of interesting. So these previews, you're going to have lower quality. So I guess that's just from the network point of view, it's a bit easier to deal with. The bandwidth, this is where you go into, what do we got? No, wireless external, this one. No, what am I doing? IP, NDI, HX, RTMP. So this is where I'm setting my streaming, but then I have my, oh, I'm getting lost here. Wireless external. Somewhere under here, which I'm getting lost, is IP streaming. Here we go. Okay, so you have your main stream, and this is what you'll be seeing on NDI. Sorry, on this is the main encoding that it's sending out over NDI or SDI, that kind of stuff. So I've got my 1080p. I could make it 4K, but I'm not. And you could do H.264 or H.265. I probably should switch over to 6.5. I don't know. I've got this set to a 50 megabit bit rate, all I, and then you got this substream. And I think, I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing that these previews here are using this substream. And these are kind of locked, like 640 by 360. I can change the frame rate, but I can't change the video size. So that's why you're looking at like a smaller version of that. So if you do need to like see a bigger shot, I would say get multi-view or even like NDI into a computer monitor so that you can kind of preview your shots without having, like, before going live, if that's not big enough. For the most part, I feel like I can sort of get a sense of whether it is exposed. Can't really do focus is a little tricky. If you're trying to fine-tune focus within that web app, it's a little tricky. Yeah. Next question. Hello. Oh, we have pictures back. I don't know where these pictures went. Leonardo from Florence in Italy. Great to have you here. I'm actually going to Italy this summer. We're going to fly to Venice and then go to Florence and driving around a bit. We've got about 3 weeks there. So I'm looking forward to exploring Italy. I've been to Rome many years ago, 2007 or something. But that was for a couple of days, so it was very brief. This is going to be a much longer trip, and I'm doing it with a 6-month-old. Is that right? 6 months? Something about that by then. So it's going to be fun. I think I'm most worried about the cars in Italy because everything seems tiny, and I can barely get like our car seat into a rental car here in New York. I think I was driving a Kia Forte yesterday, and because my legs are so long, the seat was all the way back and like hitting the car seat, and so I had to like rather than leaning back, I had to like put my seat up so that I could move back to fit the car seat in. And then I look at these cars in Italy, and they are tiny, and I guess maybe there are big cars, but they're also like super expensive. So your just sort of regular economy car is a little peanut. But yeah, looking forward to that and going to Chianti. Did I say that right? I don't know. We're going to go to Tuscany and some of that kind of stuff, and going to live the dream, live the Italian dream. I always see, like, I can't remember that movie with like Russell Crowe or whatever, but there's always this like Italian vineyards and stuff where some movies will be set, murder mystery or drama or something, and they just seem so lovely. And so I want to go have that Tuscan experience where everything's warm and there's a pool and you can look out and see vineyards. G'day from my home country, Freedom Media WA, from Perth, Western Australia. Great to have you here. I'm guessing it's late or early, one of these two for you there. I am also going to Australia. I'm not going to Perth. But next month I'm going to be going to back down under for the first time since the pandemic, which is very exciting. So since 2020, yeah, basically I did a trip to Australia in February, March of 2020, and I got back the day that things were like shutting down in New York City. And then for the last 3 years, for various reasons, I haven't been able to leave the country. Mainly the pandemic was like, it just was, the pandemic, you couldn't really travel. Ironically, I got a lot of travel in 2020 and 21, a lot of travel around the US and some of the islands sort of just off the East Coast, like Bermuda and that kind of stuff. So yeah, even though the pandemic was the lockdown, I got a bunch of travel in, but I couldn't get to Australia because they shut the borders. And then when it opened up, I was going through my green card process for the US. So then I couldn't leave because of that. And then when I was able to travel, then my wife was like super pregnant and she couldn't fly. So, and you can't be like, bye. So now we can go with a, she'll be like 3 months or something by then. So I'm looking forward to going to Canberra and Sydney, and we're going to Culbra, which is sort of Jarvis Bay, Nowra, Shoalhaven kind of area. So it's going to be good. Pompeii Politics Podcast, PPP. Excellent. G'day from the UK. Thanks for the great videos. Very glad to finally catch one live. Thank you, and good to have you here. What do we got here? Okay. Again, I think I mispronounced your name before. Amithrigala Thero. I'm getting better, hopefully. From Sri Lanka. A Buddhist monk. I've been watching your videos since the very beginning. Thank you very much. Wishing you a long life. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for commenting and saying hi. And I appreciate that you've been able to get some value from these videos. Does using NDI sacrifice image quality compared to SDI or HDMI? This is a great question. Let's cut to PTZ camera on stage right. This is coming out the side of my my teleprompter here. It's like if it's shooting out the side of the just so I could get a picture of the other PTZ camera. But basically, yes, it does. So if you're using the HDMI or SDI out, you're going to get a 10-bit video signal. And then if you if you use NDI HX, it's going to be 8-bit, added to which you're going to have some latency as well. So SDI is going to be the best, but it's 1080. HDMI is going to probably have like slightly more delay on it, but not huge amount. I think HDMI is good in terms of latency, pretty much. There's a bit there. Maybe you want to add in a bit of delay, like 2 frames or something. And it'll be a 10-bit signal out, and it'll be the 3840 by 2160. So it'll be like a 4K image over the HDMI, whereas the SDI is just a 3G. So that means it is HD, not 4K. I'm running a HD switcher with a Constellation 2ME. So that's where I'm just using SDI because, better cable length, lower latency, it's the way to go. But I did appreciate that because this camera is 4K, it's semi-future-proof sets, so I could see maybe a couple years from now, Canon brings out a new PTZ, it's awesome, I go buy it because it's 4K, and then all the switches are 4K, and everything's streaming in 4K, and everything's 4K world, and it means that this camera I could probably use as like a wide shot or something, and maybe I'm running the HDMI into a converter, but it means that I have like a controllable camera angle in 4K. So I appreciate that that is there and available. It would be kind of nice to have 4K over SDI just for future proofing, but I just was like, okay with that. So, but yeah, when you then switch over to NDI HX, it's going to be 8 bits. So you'll probably find the video a little more contrasted. So like the blacks will be a little darker, and what else? A little more crunchy, and it's going to be also that you have to set the latency within whatever you're receiving. So like I have a Madrigal device, actually it's not connected, so I can't show you. But within the decoding device, if you're bringing it over NDI and then back into analogs, or like a HDMI switcher or SDI switcher, you set the latency. I've got mine set to about 20 milliseconds is enough to avoid jittering on the network for what I was sort of testing and what I've got here. So think about that. What I haven't had my camera up in the grid for a while, but like, I don't know, a couple months ago when I had the camera mounted to the ceiling and I was doing shot down on like tabletop type stuff, that's where I was running the, just because I could, I was running the Ethernet cable and using NDI HX and then converting it back through the Madrigal device into the switcher. And it was okay for that angle because it wasn't a lip sync angle, because it was like a shot of just like my hands doing things, and so you wouldn't really notice the difference in the lip sync with the audio. So just think about that, like, you know, maybe you run, if you want to mount the camera in a venue way up high and you just want to run one Ethernet cable rather than having to run another HDMI or SDI cable run, that's where you could use just one Ethernet cable and you could use NDI to get that out. And if it's on a wide shot, then something like lip sync of someone speaking up the front probably wouldn't be as noticeable as if you're on a tight shot. So just think about that. And it's probably different things for different jobs. But what I like about this camera is it's got so many different methods of streaming and getting the video out. And it means that if I've got a big job where I want to set it up and run an SDI cable, then I can do that. Or if I've got like a really small brand shoot where I'm maybe not even using a switcher, or maybe just using the camera over NDI into OBS or something, then I can use the NDI HX coming out of the camera. That's, yeah. Good question. Eric says, hiring a remote editor. I hear Aaron Recchi mentioned having to do that to keep up with the pre-record videos, moving, completing, publishing, and Curtis does that too. Cost of doing business. Yeah, I've looked at that. And they use a company called, I think they're called Be Creative or something. So they'll have a remote editor probably somewhere else in the world. And I don't think they're in the US. I'm not sure. I think they're roughly like $700 a month or something, maybe more, maybe 1,000. And I think the deal is that you send them an edit and they'll work on that and send you stuff back for comment, and you know, and you basically have them just working on stuff, but only one thing at a time. So you've got to get that edit finished and any changes made before you move on to the next one. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, do I want to output another $700 a month on an editor? And you know, like the money that I make off this channel is like, it wouldn't cover it. You got to think about like, am I financing YouTube here, or is this part of the game? Or like, you know, it's like, I haven't quite committed to that yet. But from a business point of view, I'd be interested in checking it out, because I think if I was to test a service like that on my own stuff, then I might get it to the point where I'm like, sweet, this works well, and I trust them. I think trust is the big thing, you know, such that for my client work, maybe I would bring them in for some of that kind of stuff. And that's where I would probably start to make a lot of money, because that's a much cheaper way of having an editor. But for YouTube stuff, yeah, I don't know. I haven't quite done that. Freedom Media says the C200 wishlist PTZ camera at the affordable $1,500 to $2,000 mark. What idea times zoom do you feel give the best versatility? I've been pretty happy with the 20 times. I think that's not too bad. The 500 and 700, which are a bigger sensor, actually have only 15 times optical zoom, rather than the 300 has the 20 times optical zoom. Probably around about that is good. Yeah, I wonder if it's also like, could they just reduce the price point on the 300 now that they're like a couple of years in, and there's probably economies of scale or whatever of like having produced something for a period of time. I feel like the Blackmagic did that with the ATEMs. They came out at like $600 and then they were $500, and now they're like $295 for the same thing. So yeah, I wonder if they would just move more units if some of that price came down for different brackets. Or maybe there's a way to make a YouTuber camera that would hit that market segment without destroying the professional end of it. So if you're like full professional broadcast, $10,000 for N700 is like, cool, all right, let's get 10 of them or whatever we need. Like I think like that's not as much of a problem in the budget. But if you're a small YouTuber or, you know, someone in their basement just doing videos, then that is much more of a factor in the pricing. So yeah, I feel like $1,500 just sounds good. Like it seems like, yeah, I'll get two of them, rather than 2,500 starts to get up there, and then obviously 5,000 for the N500 is quite a bit more. Okay, David, is part of the rationale in doing a 10-minute intro prior to presenting to allow YouTube to send out more live notifications or more pre-stream prep proving AV routing prior to presenting? So I only do it 10 minutes before. I know some people do like 45 minutes before, or you know, half an hour before a show, which is you can push video to YouTube without it going live to the people. There was one, I don't know if you guys remember, when I was in the Hamptons last year, I did a whole show where I'd forgotten to hit the go live button, and you can see the comments come up, and then I realized, like, probably, you know, 15 minutes into it, I think Eric was like, you going live yet? And so I was doing this whole like presentation show live to camera. I was streaming to YouTube, but it wasn't going live because I just forgot that last button. So something to be aware of. But so you can set up YouTube so that when you push video to it, it just automatically goes live, and that's sort of a fail safe. But it also means like you can't really prep as much. So I have that turned off. I can show you what that looks like under. Let's see if I get this under here. Got to scroll across here. I think I've got that. Stream settings. Here we go. Go to my cut down here. Okay, so down here. So when you're in your studio page, under stream settings, you can go enable auto start. It's grayed out because I'm already live here, but I have that turned off. And I've also got enable auto stop turned off as well. So that means I have to go up here and actually hit the go live button when I'm ready. So what I will do is I will start streaming 10 minutes before, and that's just to test things. Like, you know, like today, because I'm troubleshooting this ATEM, the companion beta software, I realized like, oh, the whole module for the web presenter is not connecting. So it just, you want to do that early on so you have time to set up and prep. So in this little window here it'll say connection excellent, and you'll start to see the video come through. So that just gives you confidence that what you're sending out is being received by YouTube. You know, this can be very basic stuff like the stream key here. Like maybe you haven't updated your stream key from the previous one. I mean, with YouTube, you can just carry on and repeat the stream key. And so I do that for the most part, unless I accidentally reveal it on air. And then I'm like, I got to change it. So I have that coming in. And then let me go back here. Where is it? We were saying the rationale is it's not so much about the live notifications. I wish YouTube, so when you do a live stream, that's the video that kind of sits up on air after the show. And what I don't like about that is I can have like 10 minutes of just like pre-show boring countdown stuff. And I can put in a chapter marker, but I feel like with people's attention span, if you're coming to a show after the fact and you land at the pre-show pre-roll, you may not necessarily click through to the chapter marker. You might be like, oh, this is boring, or you might just like jump somewhere randomly ahead just to see like, what is this thing about? So I wish YouTube had a way of, after a live stream, choose a chapter marker that you could kick people into. So it means that rather than people at the start of the video, they could start it when I have the hi, welcome, that kind of stuff. Or when you trim a video after a live stream, have it so that it retains all of the live chat without, because at the moment, if you trim a video, you basically then repost it and it's like a fresh recording, and it's like, I mean, you lose the viewer count on it, and also you lose the live chat replay. And I kind of like that, because the whole thing was like, you know, we were live and we had a chat and these were the comments that came up. So I think an easy fix for some of that would be just being able to jump people straight in. Yeah, so it's probably more about just like troubleshooting my setup and making sure that I'm not missing anything, because as I said, I'm doing this all myself as well as trying to chat to you guys, rather than it being a marketing promotion type thing. Yeah, I mean, you can, I think a lot of that is sort of a school of thought though, is like probably like 10 minutes before, maybe 5 minutes before, to go live so that people can go like, oh, there is actually a video coming out on this thing. Sean, yeah, make sure you go back and check the beginning of the show. Good to have you here, joining. Maybe if I'd started streaming earlier, then you would have got a notification. So I don't know. Tell me, Sean, when were you notified by my email blast, or were you just on YouTube and you had a pop-up, or did you hit the sort of subscribe bell so that whenever the channel goes live, you get a ping, that kind of stuff? Because I think when you go live, it also sends out an email notification if you have that enabled. So let me know. Let me know at what point you were notified and jumped onto it. Was it on your radar schedule, or was it just something you were browsing and it came across? Speaking of putting to sleep, how is Bub sleeping? So my 7-week-old firstborn daughter, only got one child, is good. She's very cute. She's a bit gassy. So she, I don't know, I think it's just the age. I've been told between 6 to 8 weeks, there's the sort of colicky kind of, they're trying to work out the digestion thing going on. And so they're like trying to push it out. And you're like, go, you can do this. But when it's 4 in the morning, it gets a little tedious. But she's good. She has some moments where we'll be out with friends and she's adorable and she just puts on a great show and everyone loves her. And then we'll go home and she's like, you know. So she's choosing her audience there. But yeah, she is delightful. I think I was saying to a friend on the weekend, they were like, how's it going? You know? And I was like, well, looking after a baby is a pretty shitty lifestyle choice. You know, it's not like, oh yeah, I get to wake up and look after a baby. But I also feel like anything, this is my rationale for not having enough sleep, is that anything that often the things that you do in life that are most meaningful are really difficult. And so that's my rationale to kind of push through some of the lack of sleep and some of that kind of stuff, because she is adorable and it's fascinating watching her grow. She's now at the age where she'll get all the smiles and that kind of stuff. So yes, I have she's on my Instagram page if you want to go see her there, which is, let's hide that, this one. David Joshua Ford, no, not .com, just the David Joshua Ford at Instagram. There's a picture of her and me in Madison Square Park. Sean says, came on to your comment on engagement, a video 100% on the tools to do that would be great. Probably exists already, but so much has been learned these days. I think I've lost context of that. Excellent. Good morning. I have difficulty connecting my Stream Deck XL. Okay, probably need a little more context of that to know what you're doing. I would say I have a video on my channel about how to use the Elgato software and how to use Companion because they are sort of two different systems that can compete. So if you go find that, that'll sort of explain some of it. It has changed a little bit since then in terms of how Companion is dealing with the back end. Probably the long and short of it is like the way I'm using it these days is I'm actually not running Elgato software at all. I have that quit and closed, and I'm trying to get rid of it, but it keeps on booting up, and every time I start to reboot my computer, I have to quit it, and I'm just running it directly into Companion, which is just a nicer way to work. And I think like my next update to my profile is probably going to do away with the Elgato stuff, because I really just want to focus on Companion and opening up. I've got a button number 9 was sort of dedicated to the Elgato software, but I kind of just want to like focus on Companion because it's a better experience, and I think it does a lot. Okay, from the Netherlands, good to have you here, Camille. Where can I buy your background panels? Great question. No one's ever asked me that before. These I bought back in 2020, 2021. They were, I think I bought it in Black Friday, so I got it like 30 or 40% discount. They're on Amazon. What were they? They're just like they're like felt panels. Felt. Let me search it here. What am I searching? Felt sound absorbing panel. I'm just searching on Amazon here. It's kind of like it's not that. So it's this. It's more this kind of look. This or this kind of look. I don't know if these are the exact ones, but rather than the opening up these things here. So rather than this stuff, which is a little bit cheaper, and I do actually have that in the roof. So in the ceiling, I've got that up there just to block some of the resonance coming back down. But I didn't want this kind of look for around me. I wanted something that was also a little more hardy, because if I'm doing a wrong angle here. There we go. Nope, wrong angle. Sorry. There we go. Oh, I can move around. Look, here we go. This is why I'm all like live streaming. It's a very low angle though, because look, it's like cutting my head off here. But yeah, so I've got 8 panels across here. So we've got about 8 feet here, and then I've got about 12 feet going up this way, and then about 10 going up this side. So I've got this little area here where I can do a headshot, and my camera position is kind of low. Maybe I should do a shoot where I raise my camera up and all that kind of stuff. But it means that like if I clap, that's probably too loud. It's much more dead than when I moved into this little closet. It was really like a storeroom, and I was like, I'm going to take the storeroom and I'm going to turn it into a studio, and I did. So it's funny because like I have most of my stuff kind of back there. Like the original layout was the desk would be here and it'd be facing that way, but because I do a live stream each week, I kind of like it being set up just more cleaner for presentation. And so the desk is back in the corner, but otherwise it would be here, and then I would sort of swing around. So if you look at some of my earlier live streams, that's why I had it over here in the corner, because it meant that I could keep the PTZ camera on the side of the room. I wonder if I can get a wide shot here. That's not a very... It's too close. Anyway, you can see, so my computer is like, wait, that's my actual Mac in the background running the live stream. And then I've got my Mac Mini, or whatever, no, Mac Mini, M2 MacBook Air, which is screen sharing into that one. So I'm just using this as a console. So that's all in the back there. But when I'm editing normally, that whole desk on wheels would come back into this position and just kind of open it up. So yeah, it's always a little bit of a juggle moving it around. New York is kind of the thing where you have a square inch somewhere and you just kind of fill it. Like I always talk about volume in New York. I'm like, it's not even about the square footage. It's about what's the volume of the space. And so in here, it wasn't just that is like a certain footprint. I'm like, that's a decent upgrade from what I had before. It was that the roof was high enough that I could construct a kind of lighting grid using some vary poles. So I've got tension poles that go across, and then the lighting is all coming down from that. And so that's what enables me to keep the floor clean, so I can actually move around without stands, you know. So my PTZ here is on a tripod, but often it's like up in the grid or is sort of more to the side. I have actually a position on my gear stand with a super clamp that I can mount the whole PTZ and teleprompter to I've got like a heavy duty stand, like maybe in your garage you would have storage with some of those wireframe stands. This can put the camera there so it's out of the way, so I can be doing production stuff in the studio but have my camera set up for live streaming. But yeah, great question. No one's ever asked me where to get that from, but I would say if you jump on Amazon, find that stuff. This like 1x1 foot foam is like cheaper and easier to cut into corners, and it's environmentally friendly and healthy. I'm sure it is. And then this is the sort of texture that I have here, not the hexagonal, but you could do that, which is more of a high density sound absorbing panels, which is, if you buy this stuff, it's actually not soundproofing, it's sound absorption. So it's just taking some of the resonance out of the room so that it's not echoey. But this wall, for example, has a hallway down it. So if there were a lot of people that were like jumping down the hallway, then that would sort of come through. It probably wouldn't come through to the live stream necessarily. I don't think. You know, it's pretty quiet in here. So yeah. What do we got going on here? We're running over time here. I normally clock off at 11, but we're having fun. I'll try and get through these last questions, and then we will wrap up. Because I told my wife I'd call her at 11, so she's probably wondering. Well, she knows where I am. She can tune in. Camille says, I bought the Ultimat 12 from Blackmagic. Do you get a better green screen with the 10-bit sensor than an 8-bit, or does it not matter? Yeah, I think you definitely get more color resolution with the 10-bit. So, but the ATEM, I'm pretty sure all of the ATEMs have 10-bit in it. Like even the mini ATEM Mini, not even the Pro, I'm pretty sure processes the chroma and all that kind of stuff in 10-bit. So when we go back to the PTZ camera, what we were talking about over here, that's the other advantage of using the HDMI or the SDI setting here is that you can bring it into something like an ATEM and you can do chroma keying in 10-bit, whereas if you use the NDI HX, so NDI HX is more of a lightweight kind of codec, as opposed to NDI sort of a full bandwidth. And so green screening is not going to be as good. I see you use VBR for the mainstream. What's the best NDI or to OBS going out to YouTube? VBR for the mainstream. Yeah. I don't know, I guess you could use CBR. I just set it to VBR. I don't know if CBR maybe is like more reliable because it's just going to give you the same amount, but I figured if I don't need to send the data, maybe not. Best for NDI to OBS going to YouTube. Not sure. What's the best for NDI to OBS going out to YouTube? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't used OBS a huge amount. I'm usually using the ATEM when I'm doing that kind of stuff. Okay. Good morning. I'm having trouble recalling presets on the DJF, I think. Otherwise, Doug Johnson Productions. I don't know. Companion PTZ control. Nothing happens when I hit the preset number. It could be you haven't turned on OSC. So the long press within Companion uses a module called OSC, and under the settings, so if you go to under here, if you scroll down to OSC, just make sure that is turned on, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. If because you will find that for these I'm actually rewriting it, so this looks different. Maybe if I go to PTZ 4, where are we? Yes, so the version that you have at the moment is running this OSC module, and it's doing a tricky thing, which I won't go into, to basically know if you're doing a short press or a long press. And so if you haven't got that on enabled, then it would not function. So make sure that's turned on. And as you probably saw there, what I'm working on at the moment is to version 3 of Companion doesn't need OSC to be able to have that function. You can set up a short release or a long press, so you can add in this straight onto the button itself, which is amazing, and it makes it so much simpler to manage this profile, because previously I was having to have like back-end pages that this page would like reference for what's going on. So it's much neater, much more powerful to be able to copy and paste these buttons to another part of the profile where you might want to consolidate what you're working on. Wow, okay, we have some monies coming in, going to the algorithm to show the appreciation. Love the Friday morning live stream. Appreciate that, Eric. Thank you. That is very kind of you, and it's always a bit of a adrenaline when you're like, oh yeah, I got some money. I appreciate that. And same from AG. Thank you. It says keep up the excellent work. So appreciate the tips there, and hopefully you're getting good value out of the Friday morning chat. I don't know. Let me know if this is a good time. I picked this time because I feel like it works across a lot of time zones, and it also means it's a good time in my week because I'm often not shooting on Friday. I'm more doing productions earlier in the week, and so I usually don't have as much conflict. I have some shoots coming up where I might have to figure out how to not be here at 10 a.m. And yeah, also it just means that I can then get on with the weekend. So you get it out of the way and you get your live stream done, and then you go have the weekend. So that's good. Under the Tuscan Sun. Yeah, there was that one. There was a Russell Crowe one, which I can't remember. There was a Russell Crowe movie. I think it was Russell Crowe. Yeah, but great films in Italy. Sean says, is there anything you have seen that is coming that will move live streaming to the next level, hardware or software? Not necessarily. No, I'll keep an eye on that. I'll let you know if I think there is. It's a funny space at the moment between like the vertical live streaming that's sort of coming in and then the horizontal stuff. It's kind of difficult to do a horizontal and vertical one show at the same time. Like I've been meaning to push this show out to Instagram, but haven't quite got that into an automated show because YOLO Live needs to open up their OSC so that Companion can turn it on and off, and then I would live stream to Instagram on this show. At a guess, I would say it's going to be a lot of stuff that happens in the cloud and maybe AI. I don't know. AI is just the buzzword, but certainly cloud production means that you can be wherever in the world and you can kind of spin up different devices and bring people in, and it's not so much relied on having all of the gear in one place in the one spot. 11 p.m. Oh, that's not so bad in WA. I guess if you're in East Coast, it's like 2 a.m. or something. So that's pretty good. Are you planning on live streaming your trip? Do you have the YOLO box? I do have the YOLO box. It's a negotiation with my wife at the moment because normally when I travel pre-child, probably 70% of my gear, 70% of my luggage that I would take would be cameras and production stuff. Even just for personal trips, like a drone and a camera, and then with live streaming, it's like the YOLO box and all that kind of stuff. So now it's like, okay, we've got the travel crib and the stroller and this kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to figure out, at the moment she's like, you can bring a backpack, but we need to be able to roll things like baby stuff. So, which makes me think my travel live streaming might be, And I've got to work out if I do stream day. So the stream day is coming up again this year, but I'm going to be in Canberra while that is on, and with some of the other guys. So yeah, I think it might be the R5C. It'll probably be this camera, because this one can actually do UVC out of here, so I could get a nice camera looking into my laptop, and then it'll probably just be me. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I'm trying to work out if I have something to talk about, like, because I feel like in the studio I've got a bit more things I can demo. So I'll probably find content that's not needing the studio setup, and it could be more. I don't know. Maybe I could just do a travel log. I could tell you about my travels and show you some drone videos that I shoot or something like that. Companion 3, can I do an internal button set current step with a target button that uses short long press? Okay, we're gonna have to save this for next week because this is probably getting late on time and it's probably a bit more involved. Internal button set the current step that uses short long press. Yeah, so with Companion 3, when you create a button, now you have press and release, like oh, sorry, I'm not on. We got to bring this over for you. Okay. So yeah, you create a button. Let me go back here. Delete that. All right. So select a spot, create a button. You're going to have press and release as your sort of default thing, and then you can add duration group, which by default is 1,000. I wish I could set this somewhere because I always like 500, and I like execute while held, which means it's going to once I get to 500 milliseconds, it's going to take the action. Otherwise, if you don't select that, once it goes past 500, it's not going to execute until you release. Save that. All right, so now we have a short and a long press. So I would put my short presses in here, and I would put my long presses in here. But we also have step actions, so we can add step in here. So I could just keep adding steps. I could have multiple steps. Like you can just keep piling it on. And each of these steps, like if I go to step 5, I could add a duration group. So that's how that works across moving through steps. And then each step would have a short and long press if you wanted it. And then on the last tab is going to be feedbacks, and that's where you would stack all of your, like, what the button looks like. So your question of, can I do internal button set current step, which would be set current step to, what's the question? With a target button that uses short or long press. Yeah, so you can basically set the current step to this button here on the press. I'd actually have to move it down to short press if I wanted that. Okay, so now this is going to, if it is selected, so if I was on number 2, I could select number 2, but step 1, select that one. So if I press this button, it's going to make this page, this button, go to step 1, but if I wanted to, I could go to step 8 or whatever. And likewise under the held, so I could do a long press, which is set current step, so I long press and it'll jump to a certain step, right? So there's a lot of functionality in there. I'll tell you the way that I'm using this, which is what I'm building out for my 2ME, 4ME profile, soon to come, but still has a lot of things in Companion that need to be built for it, is on page 16. This is right. So I'm creating a 4ME thing, so I can select my auxiliary, and I can select my ME 1, 2, 3, or 4. There's nothing in there because I've got it running a 2ME. But it means that I can long press this ME1, and so now ME1, I can jump over to the auxiliary, I can jump back to ME1, and it's running program. And I can long press it, and it'll switch to preview. So now when I go switch something in the auxiliary suite, come back, and it's running preview. And that is enabled by steps, and then the long press is changing the function of the button. So that's kind of how that works. Hopefully that helps. Just let me check my clock here. because I know I'm running late, but I feel like these are good questions coming through. And let me check my, where are we? And we're still, okay. Everyone seems to be having a good time, probably except for Coco, because she needs a diaper change or something. All right. Let me see. Just scrolling through some comments here. Eric remembers the Hamptons. A learning experience for us all, probably mostly a learning experience for me when I did not go live, or I thought I did, and then I had to like jig myself up to like, you know, okay, an hour from now I'm going to go live again, and then I was in the Hamptons, like I'm spending my whole day live streaming, and I should just be down the beach, which is always the challenge. So I was trying to like find a way to minimize the tech setup so that it doesn't take over our lives. Does Companion actually power off the N300 or put on standby? I'll have to check. I'm not going to do that now because I want to keep the cameras on. But yeah, I think when you power down the camera, I'm pretty sure it's off. I don't know. We'll check. I'll do an email. Okay. Freedom Media says, recent updates have been great, although I do feel the YOLObox Pro CPU has reached its capacity. I've yet to experience a successful stream with 2 guests in the YOLObox. Yeah, I did. I tested out with like 5 guests once, and it just kind of crashed. So it's probably a good idea to stick to 1 or 2. Yeah, fatherhood, you can't beat it. Enjoy these times. I do. I was looking at photos from a month ago. You know how Apple Memories brings up those, you know, this time a month ago or whatever. And I was like, oh, she was so tiny. And then I look at her now and I'm like, oh, she's actually still tiny, but she was more tiny back then. And it's just a reminder of how much it changes. All right. So AG says, I have an alarm set to catch your show. Appreciate that. But your email this morning was a nice prompt to tune in. Yeah. I don't like MailChimp. MailChimp's like so expensive for the amount of stuff that I use it for. Like I probably pay $65 a month for MailChimp, and I use it once a week, and I send a mailer out to people to do the live stream, and it feels like a lot of money for what I'm using it for. But it is nice to be able to have that, to email people and be like, hey, live stream's happening, and also to do a bit more info on like what's on the website and that kind of stuff. But good to know that you're getting the emails. With a number of YouTube channels doing April Fools, did Blackmagic really buy out Elgato? I would be very surprised if they did, because Elgato is like, what do you call it? Like Corsair or whatever. It's like, I can't remember what it is. It's like the subsidiary of like a big company. So I'd be very surprised if they bought them out, because Elgato is not like a small startup. You know, it's a branch of a bigger company. No interference on the mic today. Yeah, I think it's been pretty good. I don't know if it's just like maybe there's fewer people in the building today or something. I had that on alert of like maybe I need to move my pack out from my hip and just put it on the bench here just to. And I was also wondering about running. I've got a Countryman B3 wired lav, so I was thinking about running that as a mic. And I do have my 416 sitting up here. So lonely. He's like plugged in. I haven't turned him on. But the challenge with a 416 is because it's so directional. If I go off axis, and I'm talking over here, you probably have trouble hearing me. So that's when I'm moving around, and given that I'm now a little more freeform, I do like the wireless lapel. Okay. AG says, I'm working on my first solo live stream production on June 6th. June 6th? Yeah, I guess wherever you are in the world, 6/6 is June 6th. It's a 4-day conference-style production with 2 90-minute sessions per day. All that to say, graciously appreciate your work. Great. I'm glad that it's been helpful for you, and good luck with the production. 2 90-minute sessions per day. Yeah, that's good. That'll be great. You'll be. I'm sure you do a great job, and if you have any questions about setting that up, let me know. Yeah, stressful but exhilarating at the same time. I love live production. I went through film and television production in university in Australia and in Canada, and then my first job out of university was working on like breakfast television in Sydney, and I was just doing like the auto cue for the presenters, and it was, it's a rush of like, there's a time when everything goes live, and if you're not ready, then you're going to screw up. And particularly with auto cue, even though it's kind of like a very entry level job, it's very connected to the presenter who is front and center of the show. So if you're not switched on, and then you get a look from the presenter who's like, like, is your head in the game? And you're like, sorry, the scripts, I don't know what's going on. So that was good training for just the adrenaline of getting the. Sorry, I'm going to do a little cough here. Getting a dry throat. Probably time to wrap up. But I'm enjoying your questions. This is a lot of fun. Yeah, so I think that was that live production for the first couple of years of my career was a really good background for what I'm doing now with live streaming. Also, I was doing some, there's interference there, do you hear that? I was doing some TV presenting back in the day in Sydney, did a little music show in Sydney. So that was good experience for just being on camera and talking. Jules says, looking at your studio reminds me of when you might be planning to do that dual person shoot you mentioned in a few streams ago, where you brought me to join for your demo. Jules, you've been in the back of my mind, and I've had half a mind to be like, let's do it this week. And then it's, like there's babies and there's a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I can just make it in and get a show done. Trying to just keep the show happening each week. But let's do it. Let's put it on the calendar, and I'm going to bring you in, and we're going to have a two-person show. You can be my co-host, and we're going to find out about your life and your backstory. I know you've got a lot of experience, and then we could do it like post NAB. We could chat about what we saw at NAB or something like that. So let's chat, and we should do that. And for me, it'll be also a good test of doing everything all at once, which is having a two-person chat show with a 3-cam setup. So I'll have a main camera on a 2-shot, and then my PTZs will be cross-shooting, and then I'll have companion to run the show, and my presets to bring up different camera positions. And then I also have the Stream Deck pedal so that I can be stepping through the cues with my foot, and I can say fully engaged with Jules, and no one will know except for what I told you right now. Yeah. My current plan is to stream to Facebook, Zoom, and Tech Stack, ATEM Extreme, ISO, Blackmagic Studio 4K Pro, and shooting a green screen. Wow, there's some good gear that you're playing with. I must say, even I'm guessing you've got the HDMI version. The SDI version of the ATEM Extreme is still my favorite device, even though the 2ME Constellation has more stuff in it. The ATEM Mini Extreme, the ATEM SDI Extreme ISO, I think is the best device that Blackmagic has got, because it's so small, it's got so much power in it, and it's got the 4 auxiliary out as well as recording 8 channels, and that makes it not entirely, but almost as powerful as my 2ME. Because the thing is, even though I got the 2ME and I got 20 inputs now and 12 outputs, I'm using 8 of those outputs just to go back in to record onto the ISO. So it only gives me 4 outputs. So, I'm kind of back at the extreme when I'm doing that kind of thing. So, okay, so comments on what to do when I travel to Australia in terms of this live stream, which is Zoom drones. Bringing a guest solo will, Zoom, sorry, I was thinking of actual drone and then bringing, a flying drone. But you're talking about Zoom drones. Bringing guests in solo will keep you on your toes. Yeah, I don't, this is the thing about like why a remote caller, like Zephan mentioned in his video a couple weeks ago, would be a very powerful device for Blackmagic to bring in, because at the moment, YOLObox Pro, I think, does it well and easily, but I don't know how reliable it would be if I was to rely on that for like a professional gig where I've got a paying client, and if it goes down, then I'm having to like, oh, let's work something out with the budget. So yeah, I think there's probably room for a remote caller box that is just easy to use and not so much to configure. Because it's like the more devices you have to connect is more setup time, is more points of failure, it's just more stuff to power and, you know, remember, more brain power. All right, so Freedom Media WA says, when I go to Australia, maybe go grassroots on your trip overseas. Use your mobile with Rode wireless Go mics. Rode's never sent me a mic. Holy Land's never sent me a mic. And I've been like, yeah, well, I'll just use my, I got a Sennheiser G4. So that's probably why I get a bit of interference with that. And live stream straight to YouTube. That way you get your stream fixed and keep your wife super happy, which is very important, and keeping the baby happy. Yeah, I think it's going to be lo-fi, but hopefully there's a way to like still do a stream and talk about the creative aspects of filmmaking or photography, or, you know, I could even just do a demo on photography or something like that, which doesn't need the whole studio rig to get that going. Eric says, like and subscribe. Appreciate that. Like and subscribe, smash the bell button, blah, blah, blah. I don't ever do that, but I see every YouTuber, it's kind of like the, go do that. And certainly if you want to be notified of when I go live, make sure you hit that. Sidol Thomas says, good morning. Your channel is very insightful. I've learned a lot and built your design of the streaming rig works great. Cool. Glad you've gotten value out of that and appreciate it. Be careful with all the EMF on your body. Yeah, there's a whole lot of things. My wife the other day was saying like the Bluetooth AirPods that just like live in my head. It's like probably gonna fry my brain with all the Bluetooth waves. Who knows? Maybe John Barker from H2R needs to send you one of his water bottles. He leads the way staying hydrated during his streams. That'd be good. I need a DJF branded just so I can like, you know, drink and be like, go here. Still haven't got my logo on the background. I don't know what to do about that. I was looking at maybe gobos as well, because I've got the Aperture mini spotlight. So these three colors here are actually the Aperture 60X Fresnel light. So that's why you've got the little spotlight thing coming down with a gel on front of it. But I could use one of those with a mini spotlight and get a pattern on the back. Something I've thought about, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think I might change up this space in a little while. One of the things I like about doing these live streams and doing in the studio is like always trying to make it a little bit different, switching up the lighting a bit, switching up positions, just to try to, you know, it just keeps it interesting for me in terms of how I'm doing that. AG wants an HDMI and 32 Stream Deck running DJF. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. You know what's funny is I feel like in the coming months, I'm probably going to be talking a lot more about just companion on an iPad rather than a Stream Deck. I think Stream Deck's probably still the way to go if you're switching a show as a director. But for what I'm doing here on a, pull them up, what was I doing? This one, which is, I think it was, there we go. So I'm actually running my whole, this is basically a Stream Deck on an iPad sitting on a little stand. This used to be my A10 Mini rig. They used to hold the A10 Mini rig in there. So now it just sits on the iPad, so that I can pick that up and I can just hold the iPad, so I could put away the comments if we wanted to, and I can move around and I can go wide and just try and, you know, chat a bit more in a way that's a bit more person to person, rather than, I guess what I've tried to do in all of my YouTubing is as much as possible try and get away from behind the desk, because I feel like it's a very YouTuber thing to be like behind a desk and then there's a microphone and sometimes you've got headphones, and it's, you know, it's kind of necessary for proper production. But when you're presenting, I feel like it's much more intimate if you can just sort of sit here and chat. And something like an iPad is good. I could do this on my phone, although probably, you know, I feel like someone with a phone, when you're looking down there, it looks like you're not paying attention to them. So that is, yeah, it's just kind of how I'm enjoying doing some of those live streams and just being a little more flexible with that. And I can also do my comments on the iPad as well. All right, we're going to wrap up in a second. Scrolling down here, we're pretty much do all these things. Come to Perth. You can do a stream in my studio in Perth. That'd be great. I would love to. I've never really been to Perth. I just went to the airport once and I sort of flew over and I saw it. And I know the beaches are amazing over in Perth. And blanking on it, is Tim Winton? Tim Winton. Yeah, Tim Winton, novelist, one of my favorite novelists. It's just like his protagonist is always like a down and out guy who's on the west coast of Australia, and yeah, so that just sort of sat in my mind of like the wild beaches that are just go on forever, and I think Australia is amazing for that. Signature move from John at H2R, drinking water, reminding you to drink more water. All right, well, on that note, on the note of let's drink more water, let's wrap up the show today. It's a good reminder. I will see you next week. I'll be here back at 10 a.m. Thank you for the comments. I know we've gone over by 45 minutes today, and normally I would try and stick to that, but I was having such a great time chatting with you, and your comments were fantastic. So thank you for that. Thank you for being part of the show and for tuning in. And I will see you next week here at 10 a.m. Eastern.